Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. Today I have Sashwath with me. Sashwath has been down with a little bit of a cold and sore throat, and I think he's giving it to me as a gift. Who knows? It might be Anand and Sashwath next video, and Vinod might have a break. Possible. So what do you have to study, Sashwath?
So, the economist Paul Krugman wrote an article in the New York Times titled Debt, Taxes, and Napoleon. So, this is something all of you can access. We're not going to put the link because you need to pay for it. But otherwise, the article talks mainly about the US debt and why a government taking on debt isn't really a bad thing. And he basically debunks the people who have been claiming that the government should pay back their debt. He says, no, that's a flawed way to look at it. So the argument which people usually posit is that like how an individual, when he borrows or when she borrows, has to pay back their debt in a certain amount of time, the government should also pay back their debt and shouldn't be allowed to borrow more to service their interest and shouldn't be allowed to roll over their debt. And surprisingly enough, most people roll over their debt through credit cards and EMIs, and we also do this sort of jugaad which most people are familiar with. But let's for a moment assume that normal people like us don't do it. But a government, Paul Krugman, argues that can do this, and he says that it's not a bad thing when a government borrows, especially when you're in a poor state of not in a poor state, but rather in an uncertain state with unemployment and with businesses closing. That is what happened during COVID. What you need to do is you need to figure out how to get the economy jump started. And to get an economy jump started, borrowing and then spending, like what John Maynard Keynes said, is the way to do it. So Paul Krugman draws a distinction. He says that like a normal person has to pay back their debt because over time they die, first of all. So you can't just die and say my debt is forgiven. That's not something which debtors will accept as a legitimate excuse. Number two, over time, as you get older past your prime of like 50, your median income reduces, and Paul Krugman shows this. So if your median income was $100,000 when you were 50 years old, when you're about in the 60 to 70 range, it falls all the way back to $50,000. So what this talks about is that debtors want you to pay off your debt early when you have the money to be able to do so. But a government differs. First off, a government doesn't die generally. If it's a stable government like the US government, which has existed for centuries together, it's not going to die anytime soon. Number two, the income, which is through taxes, is not going to reduce anytime soon either, because your economy is going to keep growing as your population increases and technological advancements are made. So this is a distinction between a government and an individual. So a government, one, doesn't have the time frame where it dies at some point. That's not going to happen. Two, the government's income keeps increasing, so it becomes easier and easier with inflation especially to service their previous debt. This is what the crux of Paul Krugman's argument is. And further on, he says it may not be such a bad thing even if the government borrows a little more to service its interest payments, which it had incurred during tough times in order to stimulate the economy. And the reasoning is that once you stimulate the economy, your GDP will grow and you'll be able to tax more and you'll be able to pay down your debt or bring it down to a reasonable ratio. Number two, he says don't look at gross debt. Don't look at the absolute amount. He says look at the ratio. Yes, during wars like the Napoleonic War or World War II, your gross debt goes up to 100% of your GDP, sure. But that's just one part of the argument. As even if your government doesn't pay off that debt, even if the gross debt stays the same, what ends up happening is the bigger story is talked about with the ratio of debt to GDP. So debt to GDP is basically a measure of saying how much you're taxing with your economy and how much is your debt still. So if your income is expanding and your debt stays the same, that's no problem. That's what Paul Krugman says. So what do you have to say about that?
I think he's a nut.
Okay.
I don't agree with what he's saying because he has the liberty of printing currency. Dollar is a reserve currency. He can print as much as he wants and pay off his debt. If this was true, then Pakistan is in great shape, Turkey is in great shape, Sri Lanka is in great shape, Greece.
But I think the distinction there is that they've printed way too much.
No, that's because they all have to borrow into the day in the dollar, absolute dollar. If Sri Lankan currency is the world standard, the world reserve currency is the Sri Lankan
Yes.
rupee,
Yes.
Sri Lanka won't have any problem.
I agree with that argument in the sense that yes, they have more leeway in order to print, but I still think that the argument of borrowing during tough times and servicing it in your good times is a
Yeah, even Keynes has said that.
yeah.
But the important thing Keynes makes a distinction is when the good times come, you have to lower your debt.
Yes.
You have to get rid of your debt. Paul Krugman is saying, yeah, it's a good times they rule. In his argument, he's saying governments last in eternity. We'll pay it later. Right now, it's inconvenient. That's his context of his article.
But he says you don't borrow beyond a certain point. And
Yeah, but he's saying this is not the point. Anand is off camera. He's saying another point why Krugman is a crack or a hack. Okay, I should not say these words. Some of Krugman's fans are going to be very upset that I'm saying these words. But his thing is very biased, his opinion. What Anand said is also very true. The problem with inflation in the US is because of this kind of policy. This kind of policy leads to runaway inflation sometimes. And it can be very dangerous. More than debt, inflation is dangerous. And you have studied history. You have studied Adam Smith. You know that all big empires, including the French Empire, everything you see in history, big monarchies have all fallen because of the burden of debt. They all could not make gold. If the guy, French king, Louis, could make his own gold, he could pull gold out of his hat and give everybody gold whenever he needed. We'd be all French. The reason why he crumbled was he finally ran out of gold.
But I'd say that fiscal mismanagement comes into play there because one, the French actually speaking historically were had possessed greater resources than England, and the British actually were a sad state. Their island was a very sad island. Barely had resources compared to the French. The French had, when Napoleon was in power, the French had about 2 times the manpower or 2.5 times, whatever the ratio is. You guys can correct me in the comments, but basically, the French had more manpower, more resources. They were connected because they were in mainland Europe. They were better connected, better suited to trade with their neighbors. The French were in a better position. And with the same thing we see with Germany, as we saw Germany as well. Even with the demilitarization after World War One, Germany quickly remilitarized. Hitler was able to come back into, whip up Germany back into shape, even after the reparations which they were forced to pay. And what you end up seeing is that the British were actually always, most of the time, at a disadvantage, but with fiscal,
With physical.
yeah, with fiscal management plus borrowing the right amount at the right time and having their colonies which were always funding them, they had the ability to turn the tide of the war.
For them, that was their bank.
Yes.
It was printing currency for them, the colonies.
Yes.
They're squeezing all the colonies. They squeezed India into a husk.
Yeah.
And finally, after squeezing India into a husk and nothing was left, after many famines they incurred on us, they threw us and said, okay, you have your freedom.
Yes.
They did that all over Africa. Belgium did it all over Africa. So this idea what Krugman is saying is fantastic as long as you're printing the currency. Let's say, for example, today onwards, the world is not taking dollars as reserve currency.
Yeah.
And everybody comes to US and saying, clear our debt right now. What will America do?
Yes.
Where will Krugman go and borrow some more cash? Fulus.
But then I think the key point here, that being said, yes, your criticism is correct, and he talks about the British as well. But what you have to understand is that, like the US is the reserve currency today, the pound was the reserve currency back in the day.
Correct.
So Krugman's argument is again centered around two powers, which at the times which he was talking about were the reserve currency of the world. That being said, I still think that Krugman exercises some moderation and say, yes, it's great when you can say that everything in moderation. But the problem in real life is that once you let the guy print, you give him the moral grounds and ethical grounds.
I agree with you, Sashwath. But the problem is, a drunk cannot tell when is moderation. A guy who's an alcoholic cannot be expected to set the limit of number of drinks he has. That's why the barkeeper will say, enough, bhaiya, you're tottering. But the drunk will say, I know what I'm doing. I know my limit.
Yeah.
Who's telling America this is your limit? Krugman is saying, hey, we know our limits. Let's have some more.
Yeah, but then there's also the downside of paying off debt, which is as soon as you start paying down debt, the economy falls.
Correct. That's because you've been overinflating your economy, no? You're stretching it beyond its limit. That's the problem. When you let free cash from 2007, free cash has been flooding the market. You're giving everybody free drinks. Now the time to pay the bill, you're saying, no, we should not pay a bill. Let's do some more rounds of free drinks.
Yeah.
That's what my argument is. This is where I disagree with Krugman. And what he says, we are not compared to a human being. If I was a bachelor, okay, I'm not married, I have no siblings or anybody. I incurred 10,000 crore debt, I'm dead. Who's going to claim it?
Yeah.
His concept of comparing is crazy. If I have finite time, I should borrow then. The person who should be borrowing is the guy who has only finite time. If I only have another 10 years to live,
No, but he's saying that no one is going to lend to you if you have finite time.
oh, that is never worry. Everyone is willing to lend. Very famously happened in the US. When right before the dot-com bubble burst, there were lots of Indians there. They all knew their time was coming. They're going to lose their visa. They're going to lose their job. Lots of them borrowed on credit cards to the hilt, lost their jobs, left everything in the airport, including the car which they borrowed money on, and they all flew back to India. And there was no way back then the American law could come and reach these guys here.
Yeah.
It happened.
It happened in Dubai in 2007.
Correct. Borrowing money is never a problem.
But what the government can do is borrow in perpetuity, is what the
I
argument
agree.
is making.
What he's saying is an argument which the government can do.
Yes.
But is it something the government should do? Is it some responsible kind of a thing? He's an economist. I think he's won many prizes also.
He's won a Nobel.
He's won a Nobel Prize also.
Yes.
So sometimes I think his views are a little skewed. I don't want to be rude because he's a scholar, he's a learned man. Even Shaktikanta Das is a learned man. He went to college and he passed college and he went through many cycles of career before he's become the governor.
But
he
one
does some
argument-
strange things, Shaktikanta does.
One argument you can make for the 2007 point, which you mentioned, was that their inflation never really moved much from the 2% which they've been targeting since then, until very recently when they put their foot on the accelerator
That's
post-COVID.
the funny thing about inflation. It's like blood pressure.
Yeah.
You do not know which straw will break the camel's back. You can keep on putting salt and salt and salt into a person's body.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it will top. Then you have a problem. Once the pipes burst, sealing those pipes, you do not know the capacity of the pipe.
Yeah.
The economy, you do not know the capacity. Once you throw a hammer at it, now they're desperate trying to cool it down. You do not know which extreme you'll have to go to cool it down. Of course, they're saying you're doing it too much. Anand off screen has been saying Sri Lanka has already crossed 10,000 rupees a gram of gold. And that's what happens when you borrow too much. Pakistan is about 8,000 is what is answered.
But both countries have exhibited fiscal mismanagement.
So why you tell me, you take the ratios. The ratio of America is far worse than Pakistan or... See, the idea is very clear. So if Sri Lanka is allowed to print dollars, Sri Lanka will have no problem.
Correct. If
There's
you-
only less than $50 billion, boss.
One second.
Oh.
That's why we made joke the other day, Elon Musk, instead of buying Twitter, you could have
But
saved
Sri
Sri Lanka.
Lanka.
Of course, some people in the comments were very mean about it, saying, why would Elon
But
Musk save
it
Sri
is
Lanka?
because Elon Musk is able to raise money at 0% or...
Correct.
And Sri Lanka is not able to raise money.
Yes. If Sri Lanka had invested
In
few
all
shares of
economic
Tesla-
sense, the Sri Lanka is definitely more valuable as an asset than what is
Twitter.
But your economy, Mr. Krugman should explain to me why Sri Lanka cannot print its own currency.
Yes.
If Pakistan is allowed to print its own dollars, believe me, terrorism will come down. Most of terrorism in Pakistan is because guys are unemployed.
Correct.
But one counter argument to which you talk about, which is USA's debt to GDP, which is high. Yes, I just looked at it. It is higher than Sri Lanka's debt to GDP. But one counter argument I'd like to posit is that in economics, which you talk about, even in investing, you talk about intrinsic value. The US intrinsic value, I'd say, is much higher in the sense that
Yeah, boss, but you allow me to print currency and let the
Yeah.
world accept. I'll also make Sri Lanka another.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. So the point here being that Sri Lanka isn't the world reserve currency, so their debt to GDP can't raise to that level.
So, did Krugman say that this is only for where currency is reserved?
No,
He didn't say that.
I definitely think Sri Lanka could have also taken it to 80% of debt to GDP instead of taking it to 122%.
But what I'm trying to explain to you, sir,
This
Yes,
Krugman's
right.
argument alone.
I am only referring to Krugman's argument.
Yeah.
The Americans don't, whenever the times are good, times have been good from, why not increase corporate taxes?
Correct.
Yes.
Why not increase corporate taxes?
Yes.
Okay, they want to curb inflation.
Yeah.
They can increase tax to 50%, no?
Correct.
Temporarily for 4 years.
Yeah.
So the Americans don't want to pay taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. In India, nobody wants to pay taxes. And the problem is the politicians have taught the common man that government can keep spending money and it can print money as it is.
And borrow money and rest.
Borrow money as it is.
Yeah.
And because you just take India as an example, in COVID when we started, the rupee was 3,000 rupees. Right?
The rupee was 3,000.
The gold was 3,500 rupees a gram, roughly 3,500 or 3,700, whatever it is.
Okay.
It's today 6,000 if you put making charges and GST.
Yeah.
That is an amazing loss of purchasing power.
Correct.
Okay? And you know.
But gold as an asset is also appreciated because of the US and Russian conflict.
No, okay, you take the stock market, which is absolutely which only reacts for inflation. Adjusted for inflation, your stock market is index is negative, right?
So then how is that a loss of purchasing power?
It is, but if you look at individual portfolios like yours and mine,
Yes.
it is left about it has gone three times. It's a 250 to 300% return in 3 years. What justifies that?
I agree with your point on inflation, but the only thing, and plus we don't have correct CPI data.
For India.
Yes, for India.
Because we are perpetually always having no.
Yes.
Tomato goes to 500 rupees a kg, also we'll have no inflation in India.
Yes, I agree. The measurement is tough, but I don't think
The
gold.
measurement is not tough.
Yeah. No, measurement for us as individuals trying to figure out what's going on is tough because we are not doing a good
Okay,
job.
we're digressing.
No, what I'm trying to say simply is this.
Yeah.
Governments cannot borrow beyond a level.
Correct.
You
The premise
want
of Krugman's article is the American government can borrow as it wants because it all came up to this debt ceiling.
Yes.
He's basically talking about debt ceiling
Yeah.
because the Democrats are in power and he has a democratic leaning. He says it is nothing wrong in borrowing more to service our debt. You guys chup.
Yeah.
That is only possible because he can do whatever he wants.
Yes.
When I can make as much gold as I want, I'm king, man. If I'm Midas, if I have the Midas touch,
Yes.
anything I touch is turning to gold. That's in game. Game over because I decide what everything is done. Because that's what the basic problem with America is. They cannot be the judge and executioner and the prosecutor, everything. When it comes to as far as the dollar is concerned, they decide everything. And that is why the opponents of the dollar regime say, how do you alone get to decide? Everything else is UN. Security, we come to UN. This, we come to UN. We have world justice in Hague, right? The World Court in Hague. We have WHO. Why can't we have one formation of
That's
things?
exactly what Keynes said.
Correct.
Keynes said
They put him down immediately.
Keynes said in 1951,
Correct.
which I'm sure you have read. He said, let's have a new reserve currency called banker.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the UN will decide, the monetary committee will decide what is the value of the banker.
Correct.
Yes.
And if we had Germany, the Germans and the Americans.
But to have one universal currency is, but then that goes exactly against Hayek, who you preach.
I am asking Krugman, since Krugman is a devotee of Keynes.
Correct. And what did the Americans do at the time? They said, hey boss, we spent all this money on this war, we saved you guys, we get to enjoy the pudding first.
Yes. And they
That's all they
enjoyed the
said.
pudding.
They said, boss, we won the war.
We won the war.
Now it's our turn to enjoy.
They said very simply, we need not have got into the war.
Correct.
Right?
We did you
Because
a favor.
America, we did you guys Europe a favor. We settled your disputes. Now you pay the taxes.
Correct.
The world is paying the taxes for what the America solving World War II problem.
Correct.
Right? The unfortunate part is, if China were a liberal democracy, then the Chinese RMB would be very powerful. But even the Chinese influential people don't trust the RMB because we don't know what Xi Jinping will do.
Yes.
So the dollar remains a better bet because there is more democracy in US than there is in China.
But then the US is where they are because all of us collectively decide to put them where they are.
No, not at all. See, the US...
It's just luck. It's just a stroke.
It's a
History
stroke.
played. History played. It
History
could have
played.
gone very well differently, and all of us would be Germans right now speaking in Germany.
But
if there was no Hitler and Germany had emerged as a democratic power, the Germans can be as good as the US.
yes, but my point here being that we don't have moral grounds to admonish the US because all of us collectively still accept the dollar.
No.
We accept the dollar because
Yes.
do I trust the RMB?
Yeah.
I don't trust the RMB.
That's the
No,
problem.
it's not because of that. We are born in a world where these are rules which have been set.
Yes.
You don't have a choice here. You were not asked when you were born, Sashwath, are these terms and conditions agreeable to you? You were born, you don't have a choice.
And the issue is very simple. If India wants to become a Indian rupee, can also become a super currency. But my politician wants to win the next election.
Correct.
Yes.
And that next election is won only by debasing the rupee.
Yes.
So, which is going to fetch me votes?
Correct. And this fault is
Debasing
all
the
governments.
So, whether debasing my currency today is fetching me more votes or taking a long-term view. But there is no possibility of a long-term view because 5 years down the line I have to come in front of
And that's
you.
where Krugman also fails in his argument. He says governments last forever. No, it doesn't. Indian government lasts for 5 years. And whatever policies are decided are for those 5 years.
Yeah.
If Indian government, when you get elected, you have a 20-year term, 40-year term, then the policies will be very different. The policies in the US will also be very different. The Democrats are going to be power for the next 20 years.
What people don't realize in the last 10 years, we have reversed all the reforms we made from 91. You have put a, I'll tell you an example. I recently went to Malaysia and came back. Half the flight was full of what we call sparrows, which are basically small time smugglers. Now, after 95, when we joined the Asian level in bringing down the level of customs duty, these small time sparrows vanished. But now the flight is full of them because you have increased duty for laptops, thinking you can manufacture here, right? You have laptop, telephone, cell phones, everything you have reduced, increased taxes, and there's a parallel smuggling trade going on.
We're
And
just
today,
one or two more steps from again all the red channels being activated in our airports. Now we're all walking through the green channel and red channel, nothing is happening.
Boss,
It's just going to
today
take.
what has happened, we have found the jewelers have found a loophole in from importing from Indonesia. So they are doing duty-free imports from Indonesia.
Yeah.
Now the government has clamped further restrictions saying you want license. Why do you want to stop the import of gold? Because you are debasing the currency and people are buying gold.
Yes.
Correct.
If you stop debasing currency, people will automatically stop buying gold.
But
But you have to show your intent over 10 years.
Yes.
You cannot say today stop buying gold, I'll be nice boy. The moment you stop buying gold, I'll go back to debasing currency.
Yes, but then the as soon as the Russo-Ukraine war is settled and
Gold will not fall.
no, the
It will not.
gold will definitely fall a little bit.
No,
at least.
no way. No way it is going to fall. Because if you say, I predicted that gold will come down to 1875. But I have to reverse my prediction because America has declared victory over inflation yesterday by saying it's come down to 3%. That's because gasoline is corrected. Core inflation is at 4.8.
Yeah.
So the Americans are celebrating that they will have only two more interest rate cycle increases.
But if gasoline is corrected, then shouldn't core inflation come down?
It has not. It's come down from 5.3 to 4.8.
Okay.
Where is 2 and where is 4.8?
Then how is it 3?
That is normal CPA. You should read the New York Times today.
Okay. I got it. Yes. Yeah.
Now what has happened is
Yeah.
gold has gone back to 1970. So gold is just trading at its edge, holding back.
Yeah.
The moment America starts to cut rates, which is what the Wall Street wants,
Yeah.
the moment America cuts, gold will hit 2526. And gold hits 26 is going to be 8,000, 8,500 here. And imagine this, somebody who bought in COVID at 3,000 does nothing, just puts it in a locker and waits for 10 years. His money is going to triple in value almost. Doing nothing,
Yeah.
not contributing to the economy, not doing anything. This is all because you are debasing the currency. I have a bill which I show everywhere,
Yeah.
where your grandfather bought gold for 27 rupees a gram.
Yeah.
And today it is at same 18 grams he bought is 18 grams. He bought for 550 rupees. You have to pay more than a lakh of rupees to get it.
Yes.
Such is the debasement level of the rupee or the dollar or any currency.
This is where
Krugman is wrong.
This is where Krugman is wrong. Anyway, it's been a long conversation, and Anand jumped in as me and Sashwath were talking. I hope we didn't bully you too much, Sashwath.
No,
We're
no,
very
no.
sorry.
No,
If we cornered you a little bit.
No, I had a good time.
Yeah, we do apologize. Me and Anand get a little excited, especially when we come and talking about Paul Krugman. We kind of set Dino up on this one. Sorry, we kind of set Sashwath up on. Delete Dino, don't allow Dino to be there. We kind of set Sashwath up on this one when he brought this article. We were not going to soft pedal Krugman because we don't agree with most of the things Krugman says. Sometimes it's astonishing what someone who's a scholar, who's a Nobel Prize winner can say at times. These are the world and times we live in right now. Anyway, thank you for watching Be Rich today. Do subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification icon. And if this video is something you think your friends and family would like, please do share with them. And we would love to hear your comments and thoughts on Paul Krugman in our comment section below. Who knows, this video might just go viral. Thanks.
Thanks.
I am in Tokyo on work on the 5th of August 2023. I have a lot of following in Japan, Tokyo. Those who want to meet me in Tokyo on 5th August, kindly drop me an email on the address given below or contact us on WhatsApp there. My team would get in touch with you and facilitate the meeting. Once again, I thank you for your support for Be Rich. It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to berichenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.